Good evening, all, and welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this week's Whatcha Playing Wednesday. I am Lord Kal-bardr Gellir, companion of the Meridian Cross, companion of the Argent Comet, companion of Argent Lamp, companion of Falcon's Faith, and Reaper. Coming to you live, as always, from the Barony of the Osprey on the southern coast of Meridian. You know, I've done that intro 100-something times now, and I still mess it up. Yeah, it's okay, we're here. First of all, welcome to all of you who have joined me. I appreciate you joining me sort of last minute on this one. Do you want to start with a special thank you and a sort of a well wishes for our new year? So this anybody who's not familiar with the SCA New Year starts on May 1st. So this is my first show since then. So happy SCA New Year to all of you watching, and may you have a lovely new year. And hope we all actually get to get together soon and play games in person, because that would be way more fun than this. So with that being said, I do want to sort of talk about what I'm doing tonight, sort of in the last couple of shows and probably the next couple of shows. So work for me has been super busy as of late, and sort of new job, so therefore I've been busy. And the normal game shows take a little more effort to put together because of the putting together the boards and getting the rules put together and getting guests and getting all that set up is a lot more time consuming than doing these sort of like shorter talk shows. So I will likely be doing these for the next at least couple until I can sort of find my rhythm with work and get a couple of things smoothed out. But I hope these are still enjoyable for you. And I'd like to ask all of you out there, if you have a topic or a question or something that's like a board game curiosity you have, or a plaything, or like if you find some like weird sport thing you want to talk about, send it to me. Either I'll cover it myself, or maybe I'll invite you on to discuss it with me, because I think that's a sort of fun way we can dig into some of these other gaming topics. So on that note, actually, tonight's topic comes from Master Brian Afmonsiora, sort of indirectly, actually. He sent me an academia.eu link, which I've included in the description in both Facebook and YouTube. Just updated it, so if you have refreshed your page, you'll see it down there. But it was he was doing some work in and around the Islamic area and some in Jerusalem and things like that, and came across this article that I linked there that's a series of stones. And I was like, board games, stones, that's a thing, right? And it's a thing I've talked about before, things I've talked about on this channel, and then I've sort of theorized that, and it also leads into a pet peeve of mine. So the pet peeve that I have is that we always see the claim of oldest board game ever, or this game dates back to 3000 BC. And sure, so that may be true. The secondary pet peeve I have is people claiming symbols aren't something that they actually are, or are something that they aren't. You see this a lot in anything you see that's Crusader or Templars. I don't know how many times I've seen a Nyman's Morse board being claimed to be a Templar symbol with some mystical sigil of the Templar, when really it's just a Morse board. Now, one of the things I want to talk about with that tonight is the idea of the boards and then being reused and sort of how they're dated. So I pulled together a couple pictures from the article Brian sent and some others I found sort of on the internet to sort of prove or sort of look at a point here. And the point is that board games, especially earlier period games, so things like Nyman's Morris and even like Toffel and Senate, games that were not very complex board-wise, are really easy to replicate, right? One of the things I look at when I'm trying to find games to teach or games to talk about is that I want games that are relatively easy to do, easy to replicate, easy to play. So even games like chess are just played on a checkerboard, right? The checkerboard for chess or checkers or the other sort of variants of that are the same board. So it's very easy to recreate that or reuse another board for that. So looking at like Nyman's Morris, for instance, super simple to scratch that into a piece of paper or into dirt or into a piece of stone, for instance, in like a Colosseum or in some church or in a walkway. So let's look at some of that, because and the part I want to look at is not just the fact that was done, because I think we can sort of see that it's done. So this is actually one of Nyman's Morris boards here. And we'll see that again in a minute in the actual presentation here. But I think it's really interesting where these boards show up again. And it's probably what leads to the idea of like the Templars being this mystical symbol because it ends up not being where you think a board game would be. So the first picture I've got here is this is actually from a staircase. So the article I sent is from Jerusalem, and it was from 6 excavations they did, mostly around the Eastern Cardo, which is one of the areas of Jerusalem there. And a lot of these are Cardo paving stones, which is just sort of one of the areas in Jerusalem. So most of these will come from digs 1, 2, and 3, but I'll sort of discuss the ones that don't. So this is in one of these staircases, and it's one of 3 in that first little area here. There are staircases they found that have stones in them that have board games put in them. Now, staircase is a really weird place to play a game, right? Because it's a high traffic area. But it's a possible also gathering spot for conversation, depending on sort of what was around that staircase. Especially if it was just off of a main road, which looks like this one is. So it may be a place where it was less foot traffic than we would think in a staircase, especially because of the short nature of that staircase. So these are 3 boards that were found in that area. Now it calls them Whatcha type games, which if you look at them close enough is essentially 3 Men's Morris or similar type game. It's a 3 in a row type game. Whatcha and Morris are sort of similar categories of games. So this is 3 different ones, and this is not the same stone, but it's 3 different areas, 3 different stones from the same sort of excavation set. Now, so they found them in the staircase or on the staircase. The question you have to look at is, were they carved on the staircase, or were the stones carved somewhere else and then used when that staircase was built, right? And that's the really weird part you have to think about is, especially when you're dating, and it talks about a lot in this article about sort of the dating of the staircase, and it dates the staircase and dates when that road was probably made based on what's underneath it. They're looking at like pottery or other finds that are underneath that staircase, and they then date the staircase. But that doesn't date the carving on the staircase, because A, it could have been done much later, or B, done much earlier before the staircase was even built, and where that board was used. And we'll see that again, sort of a more cognitive or more obvious example of a reuse here in a minute. We know is reuse, and that was that 9 Men's Morris board we saw at the beginning there. We'll look at it again in a second. So this is from these are all 3 from the Eastern Cardo to Street 4108 from in that staircase. All right, another one from Eastern Cardo. So this is the Eastern Cardo looking north. To the left of this is West 84, and the center is the Cardo area. So this is where we actually find that 9 Men's Morris board from the Eastern Cardo. So here's a drawing of what that stone looks like. I didn't include the whole picture, only the front here. But this was pulled flat from one of the areas, and I think it shows it in this. It shows the area. It doesn't. Okay. So it's one of these paving stones is where it was pulled from. Let me make this a little bigger. Sorry, I switched the wrong view there. So it's one of the paving stones that was pulled up, but it was broken. Now, it could have been broken when it was put in, or when it was just through use, clearly. But again, it's really tough to tell looking at this whether this was carved before or after. Now, we know it was carved by a chisel based on the tool marks. So if you have a close look of it, you can tell that it's done with multiple small strokes. It was obviously done by an unskilled hand because it was the disparity between the lines and the gaps between the lines. And it clearly was not done for sale. This is not a produced thing. It's some kid playing 9 Men's Morris with his buddies in the street, or on some sidewalk, or in some field where this stone came from originally, right? So again, no way to date this, because that stones last a really long time, right? So we have no way to know when this board was done. All we know is when it was theoretically put into that road. And even then, only sort of, because we're basing that on the road as a whole, not when that stone may have been put in as a repair or something later. And I'm sure archaeologists can tell some of that, but again, it doesn't date the board at all. Yeah, this is very much a mom's rolling their eyes as kids playing on their stairs, and also drawing on the furniture, or in this case, vandalizing city property, essentially. So this is essentially the equivalent of going down to your local government building and spray painting on the front sidewalk thing, or it's kids playing hopscotch with sidewalk chalk. That's what this is, right? They didn't have sidewalk chalk, but they did have, chisels and sticks and things, and they could carve out a Nyman's Morse board or an Achi board in a rock, and that's just cool. I think it's just a really neat thing. So that's two instances of boards being found flat as paving stones, which makes sense, right? They could have been there. The game could have been carved into that street after the street was made. Makes sense. But when we look at things like the Templars, and we hear about their mystical symbols that they find in the walls, why would a Nyman's Morse board be in a wall? Oh, look, but it's because we can, have it be carved in the rock and then the rock put into the wall, right? So this is a picture from Tiberius, which is one of the let me find the description here. The Crusader defense of Tiberius. This picture is from 1977. I don't have a date of the actual wall, but it's from the Crusader defense of Tiberius, or the Crusader period. If everybody knows what that is. So this was, this is a Nyman's Morse board that was carved into a wall, but it wasn't, right? So this was clearly a probably a street or a sidewalk or something that was carved flat and then was then used to put into the wall. And I think it is hilarious that because of graffiti, essentially, right? Because again, this is graffiti, and whether those kids or whether it was soldiers, right? Because soldiers were just as likely to do this. One of my favorite stories of graffiti is I can't remember the one of the churches, and I've blanked on it now. But there's the bishops of one of the churches during their prayers would carve 3 Men's Morse boards into the pews, and would be playing during things. I'm sure this is probably some of the lesser clergy or some of the less involved people, right? But they were just sitting in the pews playing games because they were bored. And that's funny to me. But again, it's graffiti, right? It has led to this, and you still can't date those because we have that on anecdotal evidence that those guys carved it, but we don't know when. Nobody wrote it down. As far as I know, they didn't get any kind of censure for vandalizing the church, so there's no record of it. But so looking back at the stone, this is a stone that was pulled out of a quarry or out of some street probably to then rebuild this wall after the wall was damaged. Because especially if you're talking about a defensive wall, what's more important, the wall or the road behind it, right? The wall is more important. You're going to rip out things you need less to rebuild your wall. And it's led to, I can think of a dozen historical documentaries that talk about these arcane symbols of the Knights Templar that are just in the Morse boards. It cracks me up. So shifting back to the Cardo, so I found another one. So we see Morse boards a lot with this, right? The Morse board is a fairly common thing to see, either 3 Men or 9 Men's Morse. We very rarely see 12 Men because it's generally either a larger board, but we do see 9 Men's Morse boards, and we occasionally see the modifications that you can make it a 12 Men's Morse, which is adding the diagonal lines. I know one of the Temple of Kurna, I think one of those is there's a 12 Men's Morse board on the rooftop there, or was. But we don't see as many other stuff, right? But also, would you recognize it if you did, right? So if you're walking down the street and you see a kid's hopscotch thing, you recognize that. So I think most adults, at least, younger kids may not recognize it now. I don't know if they have popular hopscotches anymore. We recognize a hopscotch board or path or whatever you would call it, chalked in the sidewalk or drawn in the dirt. And like I would recognize a 9 Morris board, or I'd recognize I could count a checkerboard. Okay, it's 8x8. That's a checkerboard. But you might not recognize, for instance, Kal-bardr, which is a series of holes. Or you might not recognize like a Hounds and Jackals game that's against just a bunch of holes. And they might not have even carved them in wood or in stone. They would have been like in dirt. So it would have been gone when they were done. There's no really reason to use it. Catherine, you know what? Morse games open portals to Infernal Realms. You know what? I'm game for that theory. I think that is a research paper you and I can work on of the theory of Knights Templar using 9 Morris in their rituals. Maybe that's maybe there's the alternative connection there. Oh, that's a theory. We'll go with that. Or yeah, Foursquare. Foursquare is another good one. Talking about the you wouldn't necessarily recognize Foursquare as a game, but also it's just a giant 3 Morris board if you look at it that way, right? But it's been reused for so many times. I know you think of at least from like when I was in high school, you could go down to any elementary school in at least in my area, and you would see a Foursquare marked out on their basketball court somewhere. Or even looking at basketball. Think of basketball in 100 years when we don't play basketball anymore, and you find a court with those markings still on it. Would you recognize it as basketball in 100 years? So something to think about. But another game I found that was that sort of led me to that second part of my little discussion there is this one, which I don't even know what it is. Which is, let me pull it there. Okay. So this is a 3x14 game from it's in the Eastern Cardo again. This is a flagstone. So if you're in the Eastern Cardo looking north, so a 3x14 game that in this article, and this is where I'm going to disagree with the article. It says it's a Senate board, but also in the same script. Let me find the description again. So this is. Nope, doesn't have it there. I lost the thing. So basically, it says it's a Senate board, but also says it's a it says it's the main Kal-bardr, and then says it's the Senate board in the same sentence, which means okay. I instantly don't. I doubt your quote there, right? This was not from the authors. This is somebody else's quote that he brought in as a point. So Mancala wouldn't look like this because it would have 2 sets, not 3. Senate, this is too many squares for Senate. The only thing I can think of, and this was talked about in the thing, is the Roman game Ludus Lentrinculum. But again, it's also too many spaces. So it's a really weird little design. But Ludus is the closest. So it's probably a Ludus style game, which we played Ludus a few months ago. So look back to that episode to see more about that. That makes the most sense. But I don't know, it's weird. But this sort of proves the point of it's a 3x14 grid. It also could have been some game that the kids made up that day that is now lost to time. Or it was they were doing like some spelling lesson or something and needed a grid to mark out the score for something. Who knows, right? There's 100 things this grid could be. This could have been the plans for some builder that they were scratching out a wall and they were trying to count how many bricks they would need. Right? I mean, think how many times you've done that you grabbed a piece of scratch paper and scratched out a project you're working on. This could be something very similar to that. Now, because this was done with a chisel and a hammer, like it's based on the depth and the tool marks, they know that. It was done with some intention, and probably not done by children because of that. And so it's a weird sort of idea of what it's for. Another example of that. So this is and again, I'm going to disagree with their description in here. So this is a ancient Roman game board at Hadrian's Wall. So they're referencing this as being another Ludus board. I strongly disagree that that's a Ludus board based on the shape and size. And this is actually not from that article. It's from the Smithsonian Magazine. So yeah, I'm looking at that going, oh yeah, it's a grid. It is definitely a gridded game, or definitely a gridded board that you could use for a game. but also it might not be a game board. This could be a scored brick that was just so it would adhere the bricks better together. I don't know. It could have been a grid they were using to mark out something. It could have been something they were doing. It might not be a game board. I think that's one of the things that people do a lot of times is the minute they find any kind of checkerboard and any kind of small group of objects, they're instantly playing pieces or chess pieces in a chessboard. I can think of again a handful of historical museum finds that have that description. And yeah, so yeah, this is a 7x9 board. That's again a weird shape for games. Now, if it was used for something like what is it, the Chinese chess, that's an oblong or a rectangular board. But it's not the right grid for that, so it's kind of weird. But yeah. So point I'm making there is not everything carved in stone is a board game, but it could have been. It could have been used as a board game, and not everything. Again, boards we have aren't always things. Also looks like it goes off one end. Yeah, I don't think we're seeing all of it there. Amber, she made a good point there. It looks like it goes off the top end here. Yeah, it's why again I don't think this is actually a game board. It does not fit does not fit my archaeological criteria, which is sparse at best, but it's something. I think I got one more here. Yep, one more. All right, so this is a. Oh, that's a good point, Fiken. So Fiken brings up a good point. There's also the possibility of apprentice, I caught you sleeping again. I want you to carve squares till I say stop. He jokes, but that's actually not a bad point. Those could be practice. These could be literally, I'm going to go carve squares or carve grids to practice my chiseling, or like to test my new chisel out, or to not sharpen the chisel, I guess, because that would do the exact opposite. But that's actually a really good point, Fiken. Those could just be that. Now, you also could say there's game boards that they carve because they're like, well, I got to carve something. I might as well carve a Morris board, right? And you can repeat that pattern, or I might as well carve a game board. And look, now we can play checkers. So that's a thought. That's a good point. Thank you for that. Here's another one. This is the last one I got from that not from that article, from ancientgames.org. So this is a Nefeltafel board, or an Ard board, which is one of the variants of Nefeltafel, from Scotland. It's in a Orkney, Scotland, in a flagstone. It's currently being held in the Tankerness House Museum. Again, the flagstone, they found it in a street, but it's a carved board. This is obviously a drawing of it. It's not the actual picture. But this is another one of those, like, this is clearly drawn by an unskilled hand. It's a neat little thing to look at. It's like I never realized until I started looking. I could have pulled 100 pictures for this sort of discussion, but there are so many boards out there that are carved into stones that it tells me two things. One, people played games, right? The reason I have this channel, people play games, and people didn't let lack of money or lack of board, lack of materials get in their way. We've seen boards carved into dirt, carved into stone, carved into wood. I didn't put it in here, but there's a picture I've got of from the Gokstad burial, which is from the ship. It's actually one of the ship decking that has a Tafel board on one side and what looks like a Morris board on the other. But it was found in the ship decking. And it's, again, probably it's one or two things happened there. Either they carved it on the ship because they were on the ship, but because it was double-sided, it was probably carved and then used in the ship as a repair piece, or they were sitting in the lumber mill taking a break and carved it in a piece of wood there, and then it got used to make the ship later. So, but it just shows that people play games, right? We've seen even post period for us, Civil War soldiers. We've seen them carving, checkerboard into stuff. We find them carrying they'll carry the pieces and then draw the board in the dirt. It's a thing of people will play games. And the second thing it tells us is that don't always trust your materials, right? Don't always trust your sources, because we see a lot of these things that are dated. This is the oldest game ever because it's on this stone. We found it in this place. Right? It's really tough to tell a lot where a lot of these games came from or how old or how young they are because of that. We have no way to date these stones accurately currently. Well, there are ways, because I'm sure there are some like laser sketch thing they could do to give you a relative date. But again, you're still talking probably a couple hundred or even 1,000 years, which for us is a pretty big gap. So yeah, that's what I got tonight. People played games. Don't trust your sources. Verify, verify, verify. Yeah, I think this is just a neat subject. I'm not going to dive too much into it for a project, but I think this is a thing that is a neat thing to look into of where these games came from, sort of, and how many boards we could find that were carved in the stones. Let's see, we had a couple comments here. Sailors lived on the deck of the ship, so they may have carved in a long transit. Yeah, so that's you're correct. From the Ghosted Bureau, they could have carved that in the ship decking. The weird part is because it's a double-sided board, they would have had to carve it on the underside, which I guess they could have done, but they wouldn't have been able to play it from underneath. So it to me says that it was probably carved before or after it was broken. So, but I'm leaning towards before, since the piece we have that's remaining is broken. So it was carved, played on, used to make the ship, and then broken, in the burial after it was put away. I'm reminded of Frida said, yeah, I'm reminded of the runic inscriptions in the Hagia Sophia. Yeah. Again, we have these grand runic inscriptions on these big standing stones, and it literally says like Ari was here, or some pretty vulgar stuff about dicks. I've seen a lot of vulgar things from the Vikings about dicks. So yeah. Don't instantly assume something is a mystical symbol or some runic writing has meaning. That's another takeaway from this. Good point, Frida. Thank you for that. All right. So that's all I got tonight, folks. I'm gonna sign off and go grab some food and probably go conquer the wasteland a little bit. So I want to thank you all for joining me for this. A couple things to bring up. So this Friday, this Sunday, for Coffee with Cal, I'll be joined by Lash Kinsey of the Black Company, talking about fringies. I'm super looking forward to this episode. Lash is a great guy. I've enjoyed getting to know him. And fringies is a weird topic. And Lash came to me with this topic actually for a show. And this is going to be a new show we'll be starting called Fantastic Fringies and Where to Find Them. Yes, that is very much a the book that shall not be named reference. But Lash is really looking to highlight those unsung heroes. And for this episode, he'll be interviewing the Honorable Caspian Blackaroon, somebody who's really been behind the scenes getting stuff done in the SCA. And I think we have a lot of people like that across the known world that aren't getting recognition. So this series is going to be good, really sort of good to bring some people in the limelight and just get the idea out there that there are people that are not the royals or the peers that are really doing good work. So tune in for that on Sunday, and then again on May 18th for the actual Fantastic Fringies episode, or for start of the series. And then, of course, the following Sunday, I will be starting the new series with Duchess Nisa called Consort Conversations. First episode will be What is a Consort? This will be very similar to what Duke, Sean, and I have done with What Makes a Knight, where I'll be sort of playing the straight guy in the room, sort of the color commentary for the discussion, how to help with leading discussion. Nisa will be bringing on guests that have been consorts or have fought for consorts to have those discussions about different ideas of what being a consort is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that will be a really great conversation to have and just sort of see where it goes. If you have questions for either one of those, please send them in to us or make sure to tune in for those episodes. And those can be found on Kal-bardr's Corner, both on YouTube and the Facebook. Make sure you like, comment, follow, subscribe, do all those things down below. Look us up on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions, or on Redbubble. There you go, patreon.com/KK Productions, or on Redbubble. Search KK Productions there. We have stickers and coasters and other stuff. There's a bed sheet out there. It's a funny joke. You should go look at it. Look us up, support what we're doing here. KK Productions. We're actually adding 2 more channels in the near future to the family, so I'm looking forward to helping them with that. All that being said, let me check the comments one more time. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry. My mother's listening, and I said dicks. My apologies, Mom. I love you. I said dicks on YouTube. hearts. All right, guys. It's been fun. I'll catch you all on Sunday, if not sooner. This has been Kal-bardr and Kal-bardr's Corner. Everybody.